All right, we'll call to order this special work-study meeting of the School Board of Independent School District 624. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chapman?
Here.
Fahey here. Kimball? Mullen? Newberg?
Here.
Newmaster? Here. Wilson?
Here.
All right, and I know we are expecting Mr. Kimball. Mr. Mullen, I think, will be coming in at the tail end of this meeting. The sole item on the agenda, even though it is listed in subparts, is to get advice from Mr. Kenneth LaCroix, who we contracted with to provide us advice on the superintendent search process. Even though we do have a bullet point list of discussion items, I think I'm just going to allow Mr. LaCroix to address the topics in whatever manner he feels is appropriate. And would you be willing to entertain questions from the board as you go along?
Sure, anytime, just stop me anytime.
All right,
Okay.
well, thank you. Welcome, Mr.
But
LaCroix.
before we start, I'm gonna call on Helen. She and I worked together for 2 days. We got to know each other, and we had a little back and forth pony show for all the people we talked to. And she explained to everybody what they did in committee for selecting a search advisor prior to my coming on the scene. And I think it's significant for those who are here to know what took place at that committee, which led to my being here.
Ms. Fahey?
Okay. As the full board knows, one of the first things we did is we had a workshop by MSBA, the Minnesota School Boards Association, because the board was adamant that we all wanted to be on the same page with the process. And in our discussions, we decided that we were more interested in having a consultant advisor than going for a large national search firm. So we set a budget, and Ken LaCroix agreed to that budget. We sent out Linda Gores was a big help to us, sent out RFPs. We got about 6 to 7 returns, most of them from large search companies that didn't pay attention to what our budget was. We narrowed it down and checked references of Ken LaCroix, and got really good feedback from the people listed as references and from other board members that had were not listed but had used his services. So we decided that we would go with Ken LaCroix to guide us through the process, because we at first thought maybe we will, another option was to do it all ourselves, but thought that would be a bit naive in terms of the advice that we need for this particular process.
That would have been pretty hard on Linda and Jody.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also want to thank George Kimball, Ellen Fahey, and Kim Chapman were on that subcommittee that worked and brought you to us, so thank you to them.
So you know the background. We're not doing a national search, and for lots of reasons, because national searches don't work in Minnesota. Licensure is not reciprocal. Retirement program is not portable, and it gets 20 below in the wintertime. And you have to move, family and spouses have careers and so on. So I can go through 50 of the metropolitan area school districts that did national searches, and all but maybe 1 or 2 ended up hiring somebody from Minnesota. And the 1 or 2 that hired from out of the state were Duluth, Winona, and Minneapolis, and you all know what happened in those 3 places. If you don't, it was tragedy, just tragedy. In fact, the Winona one was just in the news, that it turned out that he didn't have the degree he said he had and had to resign. And the Minneapolis one didn't have Minnesota licensure, but so she had her secretary doing her work. And Duluth ended up leaving mid-year back to Illinois, and the poor chair lady almost had a heart attack over it all. So I don't do national searches. Okay, we were doing a Midwest regional search, and even though people in other states may be interested, and they will see the posting, and if they're interested and maybe want to come back or something, if they're interested, they will apply or contact us. So, okay, that's why I agreed to do what you wanted to do. And the other thing, in fact, I commend the committee for what they did. They saved considerably time and money. Okay, with that, I'll back up where I started. I started just before Christmas. Got together with Jody and Linda Gores, and we talked about what we wanted do now, right now, get things on the road. And so a brochure was put together, a postie was put together, listings were given to websites such as MASA, Superintendent's Association, the School Boards Association, a variety of institutions that train superintendents and have connection with their alumni. And so that nice glossy brochure about the district was printed out to about 500 people. It was an invitation to consider and apply. So that took place. We also had your tech people put online a short survey on what people in the community would like to see in their new superintendent and what skills and qualities and characteristics. Then last Thursday and Friday, Marge and Janet and Ellen and Scott and Don, we met with 32 groups of people throughout the district. Many I recognize in this room. I know the teachers back there for sure were there. And some of the others were there. And you were there. 32 sessions. Two rooms going at a time. That's 202 and 206. And they just kept coming hour after hour. And we have all kinds of input. This board has all kinds of input on what the teachers, the parents, the community, the kids, the administrators, elected officials, all kinds of folks came to those meetings and talked about what they'd like to see and what they'd like to have happen in the district. I've done maybe 40 of these searches over the years, and I've never had that many persons show up in a district to talk about what they'd like to see. And it was open, it was pleasant, it was very, very edifying to hear how much people love this district and want good for it. So that's been done. Now, simultaneously going on, there's a survey online, very similar to the questions we asked in those group sessions about what do you want to see in a new superintendent, what are the challenges facing the district and the new superintendent, what's good about the district that you want to keep and to be respected and considered in the future. And we had lots and lots of good information. And it was edifying to see staff and community and parents and kids talk to school board members. And I don't think that that's been done in a long time in very many places. So at this point, we're now are going to talk about a timeline, what's going to take place, and what's going to take place as far as action in the next month and a half. All right. So,
Mr. LaCroix, Ken?
yeah.
Couple of questions. I
Sure.
wasn't able to make it last week, and I had hoped to, but just work I couldn't get off. But that being said, in terms of the community, the community input that was received, I saw we had PTO, PTA leaders. Beyond that, did we have any other community involvement
The elected
in the
officials?
discussions?
Yes, you had,
Business.
we had members from the foundation,
Well-
Center for the Arts, our partnerships. We invited all of those people.
Right, yeah, I saw that too, but what I'm getting at is in terms of parents. Was that the only group that we had as far as parental involvement?
Other than the persons who are employed by the district who also have children in school.
Okay.
And there's a lot of those, a lot of those.
And now parents know they can use the survey and answer questions too.
And how is that word getting out, Jody?
We went through Marissa's with the e-newsletter.
Yep, it was included
Okay.
in the e-newsletter on the 1st, it's scheduled to be again on the 15th.
Okay,
It was a 624
good.
fact on Facebook and Twitter
Okay.
last week, and then it's on the front page of the website in the news portion that feeds out to the school sites,
Yep,
and then on the the district page as well.
okay.
Is it on the press? Like our press?
We've sent it to them, I don't know that it's been
I haven't read it.
in there, I haven't seen it come up as a Google alert yet, and I haven't seen it in the.
Okay. And the reason I ask is not everybody has the time or is even on necessarily the e-newsletter list. So I'm just curious how this is, you know, getting out to as many people as possible within the district, parents and so forth. So,
And the e-newsletter list is pulled from our Skyward, so it's not, it's a voluntary community list, but the parent list
right.
should, yeah, it should be pretty, it should be going out to all, if not all, very many.
But it's in e-newsletter though, there isn't a separate blurb that's gone out
Right.
to, okay. Then the other question I have is, in terms of, I have gone to many of these PTA, PTO meetings, as have my colleagues over the years, and those meetings, quite frankly, tend to be very vanilla as far as representation of ethnicity. Our concern, I know a number of us, if not all of us on this board, have been concerned about making sure that there is adequate representation of the various groups of color in this district, which is growing, and I think is a good thing. Were there any people that you would say representing the folks of color that were specifically invited, or the special ed community as well?
I can say special ed, a lot of folks with special ed were there. A lot of staff,
Okay.
teachers with special ed were there. I can't say that you had representation from minorities, unless I didn't know the minority of the nationality, the person. I did tell you that we heard a lot about what was happening at Willow Elementary and how the population is changing there and the things that they're doing, and making the board aware that the new superintendent needs to have a disposition and an understanding about diversity.
Right. I guess that's one area that I'm particularly concerned about, is making sure that we do get input. And I don't know if the liaisons were there as well. Okay, good.
Yep.
Just so that we do get that input from the.
There was a lot of discussion on the topic.
non-work community.
Yes, there was a lot of discussion.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
Marissa,
added
go
really
ahead.
quickly as well, we turned the survey over to a translation company. They haven't gotten back to us yet with it, but for Spanish and Hmong translations, and as soon as that's ready, then we'll put it into another survey and then get it sent out to those families that we know speak Spanish and Hmong.
Okay.
Through Skyward.
In what ways, can I ask?
Sorry.
Yeah, we, will allow that question. Other than that, this is just a board discussion, but go ahead, Marissa, please answer.
Sure, and it would be sent out through the liaisons when possible, or through David Allison doing a search through Skyward for those families who have indicated that they speak Spanish or Hmong, and then sent out through email.
Also, as follow-up, copies of all that material, notes were taken, and what I'll be put together and given to the board as soon as we get it done. When the online survey stops, I think it's the 20th, is it not? We'll also have that information. And I can tell you, I used to have a night meeting. We'd have 6, 7, 8 people show up because there was basketball going on or lacrosse, whatever it was, and people were busy. They didn't show up. But they did respond to the invitation to come, to meet with us, and they also respond to the online one. You'll get many, many more responses online because it's there.
The only concern on the online though is not everybody has access to online services at home. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
shrinking percentage, but I would hate to disenfranchise those that don't have online access.
I don't know how to respond to that. However, I want to add one more piece about the input. When we get to the second interview, and I'm just jumping ahead of what I want to talk about just a little bit, but we have the finalists come and spend a whole day in the district and meet with lots of groups of people. And so they can talk with them, see them, and I have them, I have a kind of a form that they can fill out after they've met the candidate. And then towards the end of the day, later in the day before the candidate meets with the board again, we have a public meet and greet and question and answer session. And those are very well attended, and again, there's a short form that they can fill out and give feedback to the board. So anybody that meet during that day, which will be a lot of people, they have the opportunity to give feedback to the board.
Okay.
Marge?
Kind of piggybacking on Kim's comment, the only thing I can think of, and we talked about it with the senior forum, is we talk about how to get things out to a variety of people. Not everybody does look at the school website or any websites, but one other way that might be simple to just send it out to the 10 cities that are represented in our district, because they all have websites. And that might broaden the base, so it's not just parents and people associated with the school. And I'm sure they put it up there. I mean, North St. Paul has done that in the past, because that's where my family is living, in that school district. And they actually mailed out things in their utility bill, because they have their own utilities. The last time they had a survey for the people that just did paper. But at least if it was on the Hugo website, somebody might be looking for ice time and they'll see it.
Good suggestion.
Okay. In front of you is a timeline for us to consider and talk about, and to fill in the missing spaces. What'll happen next, the position has been posted, it'll be posted until February 6th, which is the deadline for applications. The applications are going through ApplyTrack, which is the district system, but we're asking for additional information than that which is on your application form. We're asking for a letter of interest application. We're asking for a comprehensive resume. I use that term in the sense that your application form can't ask anything. So we ask for a resume whereby applicants can tell us as much as they want about themselves. And we're asking also for at least 4 letters of recommendation from persons who know of their work and what they're doing in the field of education. And we're also asking for proof of Minnesota licensure, either having it or ability to obtain it. So that you will receive all of that before we interview. And I put it in a book like this so you have everything in one place. And Jody and I will put this together, and you will have it at least a week prior to your interviews. At least certainly 5 or 6 days. And it has all of that information I just talked about in here, color-coded by each candidate. There will be a schedule for interviews. There will be a form that you can fill out as you listen to the candidates. And I will also give you some sample questions for you to take a look at. And I'd like you to also think about what you'd like to ask the candidates. So we close on the 6th, and between now and then, and this was the part that when the committee and I talked, and Jen and I and George talked, was that the board wanted to select their superintendent, and I agree with that 100%. The board wanted to go through every application. The board wanted to discuss those applications, and I was reluctant to do that because any full meeting that you have is a public meeting, and you can't very well talk about applicants, nor can you talk about the persons or their performance or where they work, because applications are confidential until such time as you hire or offer a position. So the applications that come in here will be viewed by you, and you will leave notes there for me. You will express your opinion in writing, and when we're done posting it and all of the applications are in, and you've taken a look at them, and then Linda and I will get together and put together a recommendation for your February 13th board meeting. And that will be a recommendation on the semi-finalist, whether it's 4 or 5, whatever that number is, based upon how many applicants we have, what quality of applicants, and what you see in those application papers. The advantage I have is that I know lots of these people. If I don't, I know people who know these people. And it's really important to talk to folks about the candidates. Because application recommendations are started by the candidate, by the applicant. And I would never ask anybody to give me a bad recommendation. So the letters will be good. However, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It means that we have a way of verifying what is said versus what kind of performance they have in their work as school administrators. Okay? So even at one point, when we get down to the finalists, I'm going to give each one of you a name and a phone number of the board members from the candidate's school district. A phone call from a board member to another board member is very fruitful. If Janet calls the chair and talks to the chair and says, and everybody knows these people are your applicants because on February 13th, you're going to announce them and the whole world will know, and of course, they become fair game at that time. But we cannot talk about them publicly prior to announcing that they are interviewees. Okay? Yes?
Yes or no question, have we received any applications as of now?
Last I heard, there were 3 or 4.
Okay.
I wouldn't be too concerned about that now. Most of them come in the last week. There's no value of being first or early or anything. So getting all that together, talking to the people where they work. Let's see, who's been involved? George, you were involved in the last I read? Janet?
George and I were the only two on the
Okay.
current board.
You know, it's a big deal for somebody to apply for one of these jobs. It's big. You're gonna get a 12 to 36 month contract. You're hoping that you'll move into the district, and if you live too far away, you have to. You have to think about, you have new bosses, and you might be comfortable and very good where you are, and spouses have careers, and kids certainly are not anxious to change schools. So there's a lot of things to go through and think about this process of applying for a superintendency, and especially from the ones that you want to hear from. They're successful. So they take plenty of time. And one of the things that came out of our Thursday and Friday meetings was I learned a lot about the district. I learned about finances and about growth and about Willow's changing the diversity, and I learned some feelings about staff, about things, and nobody was bashful in those meetings, by the way. And so candidates and applicants call me, say, what do you know about? What's the board like? How do they behave? And so on. They want to know as much as they can because they're looking at you as much as you're looking at them. It's a two-way street. So it's a big deal for them to apply and let their name brought out publicly. In fact, before I bring any recommendation to the board on a list of possible candidates, I will call each one and say, are you still in? Because on the 13th, your name's gonna be in the paper, and people are gonna make phone calls to your district, and somebody knows somebody who works in your district, and somebody knows somebody who has children in your district, and somebody who works, you know, I mean, this is a wide open business, which also point out all of the readings that you have, all of the interviews that you have are public. And the public can sit and they can't participate because by law, the board does the hiring. In fact, it's the only employee that you do hire, is the superintendent. So we were very cautious and respectful of the applicants. All right, so, yes,
Just clarify, since applications close February 6th,
pardon?
applications close February 6th,
Yep.
right? And then on February 13th, we're gonna get a list of recommendations.
Right.
So that leaves board members, we're gonna go in and read each of the applications. So when you're coming up with your list of finalists based on our recommendations, are you gonna be doing that on Monday before the board meeting, or do we have?
No, we have to do it at the board meeting.
Okay, but when you and Linda meet to look at all the board recommendations,
Yes.
I assume, I just wanna know how much time I have to get in there and read all the applications, because that's a 1 week.
Well, you can go in before that. You can go anytime
Yeah.
between now and the closing date.
And start reading them?
And just call and say, how many are there? There's 4 here, that's worth your time, go in and look over 4. And by the way, they don't, everything doesn't come in right now.
Mhm.
They're waiting for letters and so on, so you
Yeah.
might get in, half the stuff is there, and then you come back and see it at another time. The other thing, if you can't get to see it all, you're gonna get this, which is gonna have all that information in it. Of course, that's after we make, that's will be the
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
But between now and the 6th,
Mhm.
or even the week of the 6th, you can go in and make your notations and put them in the file.
I know, Ken, last week, when we were meeting with at least one of the groups, you did say that you thought it would be, it's best practice for the board to wait until
Mhm.
most, if not all, of the applications are in, instead of reading 2
Mhm.
now and 2 in another week and 3 in a week. The fact of the matter is, we're gonna have a lot of homework, and we've gotta get it done quickly, and just clear your calendars for some days in the week between the 6th and the 13th.
And it needs to be done here.
Yes, we
Yes.
need, we
Yep.
need to
Yep.
review it in
Yeah.
Linda's
Can't
office.
take
They're not
them out of the
digitized.
office, they belong here in the district,
Yep.
you know. And I don't recommend at that stage of the game that you make copies of anything. You know, read the material, take a look at it, read the recommendations, diligently look at everything. And if you have some questions, as things go along, I can tell you, as you're gonna have questions, call me. Call Linda, call me, we can talk about it, and I can tell you how I feel about things.
At one point, one of the descriptions of, after we get, let's say, 25 applicants,
Yeah, not going to, but
No.
we have,
maybe 10,
Yeah.
maybe 12. And we read them. There was some comment in one of the things we got that talked about we would rank or make some notation. So is this gonna be something that you would suggest is just random as we write it, or we actually say 1 to 10?
I would suggest that you write an essay. What you think and what you see and what you have questions about. Because you could look at something and say, you know, I wonder if that's really the case, or how often does this happen, or, you know, is this a known program that they did? So I would say, write what you see, write about what you see. And it might be as simple as, I like this candidate.
No, I was
And
just
here's
thinking,
why.
so it's totally clear what each person says when you read it. I'm just thinking as you try to grade papers
Yeah.
and see some commonalities and just,
I know my plan is to take my computer into the room when I'm looking at the files, and just, because I can type faster than I can write, and nobody can read my handwriting, is just kind of type in my notes and then present it to you and Linda.
Any ranking or rating form is gonna miss things. And each of you are gonna see these candidates in a different lens. You know, an educator, a lawyer, you know, you're all gonna see it differently. So that's why I just as soon have you make your comments. Because I plan, I'll be constantly looking at these materials, and I plan if I have any question, or if I have a concern, or see you have a concern, I'm gonna call you. And say, you know, here's my concern about this particular one, and here's what maybe you overlooked when you said this, so that you get some feedback.
but you're recommending then that we do this along the way.
Yes.
Because it's gonna take you time to do this too.
Yes, yeah, yep. But that's part of the advisorship.
Right.
Yeah. I don't have any trouble with that at all. Normally, what I've done in the past, I would ask that 3 board members be assigned if you have a 7-member board, and would sit with me, and we would go through them at a workshop meeting. The difficulty with that is if people show up, you are immediately talking about what you don't like and what you see, or you question things, and then you've already violated the confidentiality. If you go look at, that's your right as board members. 'Cause you're the ones that are hiring. You can look at that. Your HR person can look at it. I can look at that. But it's not public information, and it's confidential. Remember that, it's confidential on your part until 13th of February, when we publicly announce and you approve the candidates.
You would want all of our comments though, basically by the 10th, that Friday? Or the
No, we
11th?
have from we've done it on the 6th, and we're meeting on the 13th.
Right, but the 10th is that Friday, and that's when we would come in and be looking at the last time
Well,
here.
they have that in before.
Right,
Yeah.
but that would be the last
Yeah,
day to
yeah.
be looking at them.
I'm hoping we're gonna have your name on each file, so you can check off that you've read it and leave your comments. Sometimes you're just gonna read it and you say, I don't know what to think about this. You know, here's a person that has not been a principal, has never been a superintendent, and is a director in a very small school district. I suspect that you're probably not gonna spend a lot of time on it, because this is a comparative process. And when the next one has 5 years of superintendency, has advanced degree, has licensure, worked in Minnesota, done legislative work, you know, I just go on. It's quite a difference from the two I just described. So there would be a number that you won't spend a lot of time on. And don't expect a flood of applicants. I'm guessing in the teens.
You did say there were a number of metro area districts which have current superintendent's
Edina,
openings.
Lakeville, West St. Paul, Forest Lake, Elk River, here, there's one more I can't think of right now. And that doesn't count Greater Minnesota. That's just in the metro, and that's for Summit County area. Yes.
I apologize for getting here late. So you may have talked about some of this, but I just ask again. To me, the biggest thing is that we are, choosing someone based on all of the feedback that we've solicited. And not just on our own 7 whims, right? Which is, of course, we wouldn't do that, but it's a process, and so we're doing surveys. Can you remind me what the other listening sessions were like?
On the 2 days?
Yeah.
Oh.
When is that again?
We had 32 sessions.
Yeah.
That was last Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
Rochester,
Yeah.
Janet, Ellen.
And there were, how many people?
Scott. Oh, that's a good question. Some had a dozen or more, and some had 4.
32 sessions.
I would say an average of 8.
And I know that great notes were taken, copious notes were taken. So we are going to get a compilation of that.
Yes.
And including things that kind of move to the top in terms of repeated characteristics. Okay, so that, then we have the survey that's going out to the community.
Yep.
And we'll get a compilation of that, the characteristics that rise to the top.
That's right.
And so, in an ideal world, then, when we're looking at it, or at least when I'm looking at it, and when you're looking at the applications, those characteristics are the key. And not how well you know them, or I know them, or anything like that, right? We're really honoring the process. So then we're going to go in and look at these. Marge mentioned you don't necessarily want a ranking, but if we want to, we could, right?
Sure. If you want.
And, but you want something like this one, because in a narrative sort of way. And in my view, it would be because I feel like they satisfy the characteristics that all of the stakeholders endorsed.
In their letters, and in their resumes, and in their letter of application, and in the recommendations, you're gonna see a lot of stories about things that they've done. A lot of recitation about, we had this difficulty, and he or she came into the district and dealt with it this way. One of the things we heard here a lot is visibility in the community, involved with the community, getting the community involved in the schools. We got referenda coming up in the future and so on. Experience with bond issue and referenda. Experience of being part of a community and contributing and partnerships. We heard a lot of that. Good communicator. I'm not talking about not just the newsletter and online. I'm talking about eyeball to eyeball with people. I'm talking about being available to talk to groups, doors always open, works with other government bodies, worked with the legislature. So those are the kinds of things we heard that fit into the characteristics that I think you should be looking for. And you'll have that soon, all of that. Okay, move on again with timeline. Close on the 13th, close on the 6th, board meeting on the 13th, naming semifinalists, and then the first round of interviews. Oh yeah, there'll be a work session on the 13th. But two things will happen on the 13th. A work session, like now, to talk about interviewing, to talk about questions, to talk about how to conduct an interview, how to behave in an interview, and what your do's and don'ts of interviewing. And then you'll have a board meeting after that in which you will act upon the names of the persons for first round interviews. So you have a work session, the work session's preparation for interviews, and then of course the board action following that. The first round of interviews we selected are going to be held on, let's see,
February 22, 3, and 4.
February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, if needed. And the reason I put 3 days in there, for two reasons. One, if we have more than 5 or 6 persons, you can't do it 2 evenings. Well, you can, but it's you know, it's hard work, and it takes a lot of concentration, and it's so it's not fair to the applicants and not fair to the board members to pile everything in a short period of time. So I'm thinking 4 or 5, 3 one night, 2 the next night, starting at 4 in the afternoon, because I know some of you work. We start at 4 in the afternoon, which enables people who want to come to the board meeting to do so, which enables you hopefully to get there and be there. What we'll do is I have an interview break and have something to eat, and then include the candidates that are there, and finish up the evening interview. At the completion of the interviews, whether the second night or the third night, then you have the task of determining who stays in the process and who does not. Let's assume, for discussion's sake, that we have 5 that we interview. And you said these are the 2 that you like, you really like. So let's keep these 2 into the process and inform the others. Usually I recommend 2 and an alternate. So because at that stage of the game, things change. The board where they work says, we want you to stay. What can we do to make that happen? And it's usually more help and more money. Or family says, we don't want to move. We've gone too far with this, and now it looks like it might happen. So always you have 2 that for sure and 1 alternate. And at that stage of the game, you're really splitting hairs, and based upon how much you like or see that this person could be a good fit. So it's all about fit, because they're all going to have advanced degrees, and they're all going to have licensure. All of them are going to have various experiences. All of them are going to have degrees of success. So very often it's how it fits here and the characteristics that we talked about. So, finish the first round, and we have another workshop, get ready for the second round of interviews. The second round, by the way, the first round of interviews, the same questions, the same order are asked of all 5 or 6 candidates. And these are questions we'll put together. And there'll be legal questions, there'll be about the job, about the work, and there'll be no questions about personal life, no questions about religion or orientation of any kind. They're about the job. The second round of interview, the second round, we'll have the candidate one at a time in the district for the whole day. They will spend time at a public meeting, and anybody can come to that meeting and ask them questions. It'll be monitored meeting, it will be controlled meeting, but people can ask questions of the candidates. And my experience is a lot of people show up for that. A lot of people will know about the candidates, and I will ask you to make phone calls. I can tell you, every union in the district will make phone calls. Principals will make phone calls. Everybody who's concerned about this person will make phone calls and ask their counterparts in other districts about them. And I welcome that feedback, because there's no sense of not welcoming it, because you can learn from it. And even though they have their own agendas as a union or as principals or whatever, they live and work here, and if they have this place at heart and what's best for it, they're gonna try to find out. And I encourage them, if they've learned something that I should know that's different from what we were hoping, please tell me. And I can check it out. And that happens frequently. All right. So there's more involvement than you think. Yes.
Well, actually, it's for Marissa and then Jody, but, Marissa, White Bear Press planned, to publish bios once the applicants are identified?
We haven't asked them to, but we certainly could. I don't know what they would have done in 2008 for the process. We can certainly ask if that's decided that you want to.
I recall only seeing the names of people who had made first round of interviews back when Dr. Lovett was hired. Is that your recollection? We didn't see full bios.
Went to the second round, you mean?
I thought we saw both, because when they go to first round of interviews, their names are public. And then when they go to second round of interviews, that smaller number will also be public. I never saw bios in the White Bear Press. I don't recall that.
Which papers cover your board meetings?
The White Bear Press is our legal publication, but the
Do they
Hugo
attend
Citizen and the Vadnais Heights paper.
Anybody from St. Paul, Minneapolis?
Only if we do something terrible.
Or hire a superintendent.
Right,
Yeah.
we could get some attention from St. Paul.
So they'll do a bio, some are long and some are short, but they'll do something.
Okay.
Because MSBA, all of you belong to MSBA, you see the new clippings every day, and, okay, they'll pick it up, St. Paul will pick it up, they'll hear you're interviewing, they're gonna find out who the candidates are, they're gonna come here, and you wanna take their pictures, and so on. They will.
Jody?
Jody, second round interviews, March 1, 2, 3. The word finalist midway through the first paragraph, I presume, should be plural, as well as in the first,
finalists,
as well as
yeah.
in the first sentence of the
Yep.
second paragraph.
And I was
There'll be
gonna
more
say,
than one.
the first round is the same questions for everybody in the same order. The second round is more candidate specific, because you've read about them, you've made phone calls about them, you've talked with them and heard them in an interview, so there are things that you want to follow up on and talk about and have them describe further. One of the things I asked them to do is, before the interview actually starts, to do a presentation on an educational topic of their choice. It could be anything from a reading program to how to pass a bond issue. Something that they have done and they're passionate about, and it's a kind of a stand up and deliver, they would say, to see how well they do that. and also in your interview part, you may ask questions about that, further questions. And again, I'll give you some sample questions to work with, but I want you to let me know what you want to know about.
So this presentation's gonna be spontaneous?
Oh, no, they're told to prepare it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're told to prepare one.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll use electronics and all works, PowerPoint, they'll do a wonderful job.
Because I've heard of some places where they kinda can put people on the spot. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's good, and other times it may not be the best rate, because somebody looking to do their job or land a job, it's a little different than somebody,
One
how
of
they
the
would do
things that
in the job.
I want you as a board to understand is that these are professionals, they're putting themselves out, and no gotchas. We don't talk about what we don't like about somebody. If you don't like somebody, you're not gonna hire them anyhow, so why bother talking about it? I'd rather have you talk about why you like a candidate. What are the positives that this candidate brings, rather than, I don't like this, I don't like that. If you don't like it, that's fine, but we don't put people's personalities and their careers and their reputations out in public. Okay. So, when they leave, only one person's gonna get the job. When the other ones, whatever that number is, apply, and whatever that number is that we interview, they have to leave here saying, I was treated with respect, with dignity, and I feel like they treated me fairly.
Just wanna go over the timeline again, so I'm looking at the March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd,
Yep.
if needed. And so, let's just say we start with the first is a good date, so if there's 3 finalists, you thought 2 might be more common, but
Yeah.
the 2 or 3 will spend that entire day in the district, same day.
No.
Different day.
3 different days.
So the first day, the first one.
Yep.
Second day, the second one, then third,
Yep.
if necessary.
Mhm. That'll start probably 8 o'clock in the morning and go till you finish with your
And
interview.
so at the end of the day, the one finalist will interview at the South Campus Theater, and then the next night, the next. Am I mixed up?
No, that's right. The first day, finalist 1 interviews with the school board at the end of the day on the district.
Yep.
Day 2, finalist 2 interviews with the school board at South Campus, yep.
At
I
the end
think
of
that's
the
what
day.
Mr. Kimball
And
was
I thought it
getting
was
at.
North Campus.
No, it's
No,
gonna be south.
south.
It's gonna be south.
It's gonna be south, yeah. We
Okay,
moved it to
all
south.
right, okay.
So then,
Yes, we're gonna be there, and, but for most of the day, we're gonna meet here though. We're gonna use that because we need space for a lot of folks. But we're gonna meet the cabinet here. They're gonna have lunch with some of you, or dinner, probably lunch would be better if we could work it out, because dinner gets kinda crowded with a public meeting in the afternoon. And, so, I'll bring all the principals in. Bring all the cabinet in. Spend some time with, some of the directors about programming, what's going to happen in the program. We're gonna have them explore, I'm gonna have them get around to the district and see the buildings, see where the kids live, where the kids come from. So, it'll be a full day.
Do you have concerns about that, Jody?
We have the Lions Club, so that they've got all of our rooms reserved even during the day on some, because they keep their costumes and stuff, so.
Oh, okay.
So
So
it'll
I'm gonna
be
have to
somewhere
check on
other
that.
than District
We'll
Center.
find a place.
We'll find, it's a big
Yeah,
district, we'll
yeah.
find a place.
Yeah, you got a lot of room. This building is not usable yet, too many things going on.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do this before your break, because once that happens, people are scattering every direction. Your calendars, if you look at your calendars, parent conferences, concerts, spring athletics, all kinds of stuff going on. We'll try to be done by that first week in March.
So if we do have, like, maybe we just end up with 3.
Yep.
Third one would be on the 3rd. I don't know how we would make our decision. You have the
Well,
timeline to
there's
make-
two ways, George. On the evening of the last candidate, we sit down and we do a poll. And it just, I'm not asking you to discuss with anybody, I just wanna see where you are. And the reason I do that frequently, we can bring this down to, we're not talking about everybody. Frequently, if you say, I like 2, and I like 3, I like 2, I like 3, and all of a sudden we find there's where you are as a board. Then we could talk about those 2. And that's the same thing when we break it down after the first round. We'll do a poll and just see where, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards. Now, you can do it that night, or you can take another day or 2 before you get together and make a decision. That's up to you.
When is our break?
March 13th through the 17th.
So we have the next week.
Yeah, and you don't wanna lollygag too long. In light of, some of these are gonna be in other places as well. So I'm saying, when you get to the point where you feel like you can come to a good consensus, that's when you should move forward.
Like, you know, just personally, I think I would, I don't know, 3rd is a Friday, but, you know, you're fresh with that last person. And rather than decide then, but that, you know, I'd prefer to have a few days to think.
We could be
about it.
Monday. We could have a Monday special board meeting,
And maybe, you know.
or a Saturday morning special board meeting if you like.
And we're flexible on that
Mhm.
Oh,
scheduling
yeah,
at this point.
oh, sure.
Depends if there's 1 or 2, or, I mean, 2 or 3.
Don't we have a Monday board meeting scheduled for the 6th anyways? Because of the
Mhm.
spring break?
Yeah, that's right, we do
Yeah.
have an early board
Yeah,
meeting in
for sure.
March.
Be a natural.
Yep.
But I'll leave that up to you. You know, that's your decision.
Right. And then the goal is to offer the position, have an acceptance, and have a signed contract in hand before tax day.
Okay, and what we do is when we reach a consensus, and quite frankly, you know, it should be unanimous vote. That's very important. It's important to the candidates, it's important to the public, it's important to you. If you're at a 4-3 vote, and you're sticking mud and concrete with that, I'm not so sure I'd take the job. So think about that. Imagine starting a 36-month contract with 3 people who don't like you.
It's kind of like the US electorate.
Yeah. I'm just saying, but, you know, you'll come to a consensus. If they're really good candidates, you'll come to consensus. The cream will come to the top, and you will give up your own agenda if you have to. And sometimes it takes a while, but that's important. Do you understand that? I frequently talk from this perspective of the superintendent. That's what I did for 22 years. And I know what impact it has on your life. I know what impact the school board has on your life. My wife said, I hope I don't die in a board meeting. And he probably had to put me in a freezer until the board meeting was over, you know. Your whole life is around your work. So you have to consider that that's very important to them. Yes?
There are, I've heard of, you know, searches where you get down to those last 2 and assuming that they're not from Alaska, and you've had visits to those people's districts. That doesn't look like something that's in the works.
That's a board decision. I don't tell people to do it or even encourage them to do it, and I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. Who sets the agenda on the other end?
Well, probably the
Candidate.
superintendent.
The candidate.
Yeah.
And How do you know it with veracity? I know a situation up in the Iron Range where the three of the board members traipsed up there and they talked to everybody, including the guy in the barber shop. When they walked out of the barber shop, he said, "Hope they take him, we get rid of that fella." He just gave him a line of baloney.
What's that? Say that again?
I say the barber shop gentleman gave the board a line of baloney.
You don't think he really felt that way?
So,
I mean, I'm saying I understand what you're saying, but the other thing is you walk down the halls of the school and you see the little third grader and you say, hey, I mean, you might have an opportunity to hear
yeah,
some
yeah,
sincere
that's up to you.
feedback.
That's up to you. Yeah. I do recommend making the phone calls to board members. I think anybody who knows that person is school board person. If you want to go visit there, it would be good if all of you could go.
But it would have to be a posted open meeting with all 7 of us traipsing up somewhere together.
And everybody, get the bus.
You decide.
Yeah, we can make that decision ourselves.
Well, but we have to plan that if we're going to do it, that
Well, it
changes
could be,
the
once we
timing.
determine who the first round applicants are, we may think, well, looking at this person or this person, we really need to visit their community, their school district, so, yeah. But we can make the decision
Yeah, you
later.
can decide.
Go lurk around.
Well, I don't want to use the word lurk, but.
You can go visit a school district anytime, any place, just go to the front door and be a visitor and walk around.
Yeah, well, that's what I think it's a good idea,
Okay.
generally.
Yeah.
I think that, we all can talk to board members, and I know, we all know board members and stuff, but that's one perspective, right?
Scott?
But
If
you
all
do-
parties
Oh.
are in agreement, would you recommend accelerating the selection and the contract approval?
Well,
We'd have 2, if not 3 opportunities to do that before April 10th, the way I see it.
time-wise. Well, when we finish the second round of interviews, you could do it right then and there if you were.
We've got a board meeting on the
You have made up
6th.
your mind and this is the direction you want to go. And I suggest you do it this way, offer the position, subject to a reaching a mutual agreement on the contract.
Binding? Binding agreement? The
Well,
reason
we'll
I've seen people accept and then back out,
Yeah.
Well, and we'll have a negotiation process. We are gonna use our district legal counsel to negotiate the contract with the candidate. We're not going to ask Mr. LaCroix to do it, or I'm not gonna do it, so.
And the thing that they'll all know, they're gonna know what you're paying right now, what you paid for the last 3 years. It's all public information. So in most cases, in 90% of the cases, you're gonna pay comparable to what you're paying right now. And they know that. And if you come in and say $20,000 less than what's happening in the school districts of comparable size in the metropolitan area, the chances are you will come to agreement. And if you say we're not paying for insurance, that's not gonna happen either. And if he says he wants a country club membership, that's not gonna happen either. So what I'd like to find out is your parameters and what he or she needs. And no foolishness. Because there's sometimes requests made that you simply say no to. Because it doesn't make sense for you to do that. And there's things that they're gonna say no to, because that's not what's happening around. Just as you're competitive on other contracts and comparable districts and comparable sizes and so on, location, same thing there. So I don't see, like happened unfortunately in North St. Paul, happening here. Because North St. Paul just lowballed, they thought they were gonna save some money, and the person didn't take the job. And that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. So it's not a case of everybody goes into this on the salary, on the contract as a big surprise. If there is a big surprise, it's gonna fall apart.
All right, does anyone have any final questions for Mr. LaCroix? We do need to wrap this up so we can have a short break before our 7 o'clock regular meeting. Any other questions? I know Mr. LaCroix will be very available to all of us.
I just have a few comments.
All right?
One, be patient. It's a step-by-step process. It takes time for people to make application. It takes time to vet. It takes time for things to happen. And don't try to move it along at your own pace, because it won't help any. Secondly, be confidential, because it's a great temptation to talk about these people. Or ask questions, or do you know? Don't recruit. Recruiting really hurts the district in the long run if you do that. Because when you tap somebody on the shoulder and say, why don't you apply for our job, the word is out that a board member, a decision maker, has already talked to so-and-so. So why should I put myself out with the possibility of, nothing happening for me, because the board member's already, well, it was one board member. But people see the power that you have as a board, especially in relation to this, and so don't recruit. Now, if somebody asks you a question about the district, and you go to see, or Schools for Equity, or you go to the MSBA, and somebody asks you about it, you can talk about it, sure. Tell them if they have questions and they want to ask you. But don't go out making phone calls or tapping people on the shoulder. Be polite. All of you need to be, if at all humanly possible, at the interviews. Because all of you are going to be part of that decision. All of you should read the materials. If you can't get in here to read them, you're going to trust your fellow board members, and you'll get the information, and you'll have it in plenty of time to look it over. Be positive. We don't want to spend a lot of time. That's one of the worries I have about this business of all board members talking about the applications. All of a sudden you're not positive anymore. You start nitpicking, and you don't want that to happen. Consensus I've already mentioned. Trusting in each other. Don't want any lone rangers off trotting down the road by himself and doing it your way. That doesn't help this process. Most important thing you're going to do for a while is hire a superintendent. So don't be a lone ranger. You work as a team. You like each other. You get along with each other. And that has to permeate this whole process. There should be a committee of the board of 2 or 3 persons to help with the contract. Then what happens, that committee will make a recommendation to the full board, and and we'll dig up data for you on salaries and benefits and things of this nature. With MSBA's contract today for superintendents, it's pretty well defined. There's some deviation, but they're encouraging board members to follow that, which is a legal document. And you have your own attorney to look it over and to write it up. Okay. Yeah, recruiting sends conflicting messages, and all right, that's my bit. I'm done.
Thank you, Ken.
Key dates. Oh, sorry, one more issue. We had talked about in the proposal the possibility of an advisory committee. Have you thought about that, or where are you on that?
I would recommend against it. I mean, we've had so much input already, and we continue to gain input through the online survey and through the opportunities for members of the public and all the constituency groups to meet and ask questions of the candidates during the process, that I think it would not be necessary to also have an advisory
And the
committee.
feedback forms will give you.
Exactly.
I agree with Janet. I mean, I was fortunate enough to sit in here on Friday, and and listen, and I thought it was very well attended and there was a lot of good information that came out regarding the whole process, so I would agree with you, Janet.
Ken, what words of wisdom do you have to share with us relative to your experience with other districts as far as having an advisory committee or not? I mean,
In a
what's your
smaller
thought
district,
process?
I would kind of recommend it because they don't have the opportunities for this kind of flow of information and sharing and online and things of this nature. I did Rosemont Apple Valley last time, and the district is so big that if the board chair is gonna be more wrong than right, no matter who you pick. And when I was seeing the crowd that came through here Thursday and Friday, you'd have a hard time coming out okay on who you pick to be on that advisory committee. So the size district has an influence on that. Smaller district, smaller community, different story. Bigger district, you have lots of other opportunities beside that. But again, it's your decision.
I guess in lieu of that, that's where part of my thing of, we interview people on that, those 3 days of early March. And, you know, I would like to have a few days and even be open to having, there's gonna be a ton of people at South Campus hearing these 3 people. And I'd love to hear what other people think. And, you know, I'm gonna make up my decision, but just like a representative legislator, right? They get calls and they get information from their constituents before they make that final vote. And I would want that. And I think that's important, especially if we're not gonna have an advisory group.
We do on the timeline, after each full day with each finalist, give them an opportunity to meet with community members and then we ask them, there will be forms available for them to write any written feedback that they have about the candidate and give it to the board. So that sounds like it would meet a lot of what you're suggesting, a lot of your requirements. Does that sound good?
Janet, sometimes the chair will ask certain people who attend the interviews
Yeah.
and might ask them what they think or if they want to speak to it at all. I mean, you have that opportunity to do that when you start making your decisions about things. And that's an opportunity. It's for those who have come regularly and saw all the candidates. You have that possibility.
Very good. All right, well, seeing nothing further, we will reconvene downstairs in our regular board meeting in 15 minutes for our regular meeting.
Are you comfortable?
Yes.
Yes, you've done a good job.
How we're
Ben.
proceeding?
Yep.
Okay. If you're not, call me.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
I second it, we are adjourned.